Welcome to the first edition of the 2025 All Things Advocacy with AARP. In case you have forgotten, I'm Josh Askvig, and with me as always for All Things Advocacy is Janelle Most. Janelle,
hey,
we're here.
Most people call this the most wonderful time of the year, right?
and
it was
they're
because
definitely talking about sessions starting.
Oh, yes, it is. The legislative session's starting. They were just in town for the organizational session. Or is that just us?
That's just you and me.
Okay.
It's just you and I who love this stuff. So, hey, before we talk about the legislative session and the organizational session, maybe just a quick rundown of how we got to who these elected officials are. We had an election this year, just a month ago, and maybe just kind of a couple of highlights from North Dakota elections.
Yeah, everyone knows it was a general election this year, but what we know is that we're gonna have a brand new governor. So Governor-elect Kelly Armstrong will take office
in like 10 days.
In 10 days.
Yep.
So it'll be a new governor. We've also got a new congresswoman. Julie Fedorchak is moving over to Congress, which will be really exciting. We've done a lot of great work with her with utilities cases. We're excited to see her and her move to Washington. Senator Kramer got reelected. Those were the three really big races that we were watching. And then of course we were part of the Keep It Local Coalition. Property taxes was huge and on everybody's mind during the primary, during the general election. Thankfully, we were helpful in getting that ballot measure defeated. But what we know now, we're going to pivot and have a much richer conversation during the legislative session about what property tax it is now and what does the future look like.
Absolutely. And if you want more, you can always go to aarp.org/ndvotes. There's links to the Secretary of State's page there where you can find more about what happened in the elections if you want to dig deeper into that. So let's pivot to we have a new legislature seated and in place. They've been meeting the past 3 days in the Capitol here in Bismarck, where new legislators got sworn in, including those who got reelected, seat assignments, all that. Leadership, did anything change in terms of legislative leadership?
No, I think what we know is there's a steady hand with leadership right now. Representative LaFleur is still the majority leader in the House. Senator Hogue will be the majority leader in the Senate. We've got Senator Hogan as his counterpart, and then Zach Istuff, the representative in the House, is new to leadership. But what we know is he was also under Representative Boucher. He was the assistant majority leader. So there's not a lot of shifts in the leadership, which is good, especially as we look at new legislators. A lot of really big issues they're going to be dealing with. We know that we've got steady leadership, and they've really looked at staffing committees in a way that will help, really institutionalize, but also kind of build some leadership on the committees as well.
But there has been some changeover in some committees that we're going to be appearing in front of, especially on the House side. So there's a new chairman of the House Human Services Committee because the longtime chairman, Representative Weiss, is now the Speaker of the North Dakota House of Representatives. So who's the new chairman of the House Human Services Committee?
So Representative Matt Ruby from Minot is going to be the new chair of Human Services, and he was he was the vice chair in that Human Services Committee. So we've started to already develop a relationship with him. He knows who we are.
Yes.
He knows what issues we stand in front of him and talk, about every legislative session. But there's a lot of new members of the legislature that are on the Human Services Committee. And there was also a shift in leadership on the Industry, Business, and Labor Committee, which we don't appear in a lot, but we do. And there's a new chair,
Representative Worry. Representative Worry.
Is going to be the chair of that. And there's some new members there as well. So during an organizational session, it's a lot of meet and greet, and we'll have to do some, getting people to know who we are and the issues, but great conversations, and people are really willing to learn and understand really the scope of what our focus will be this session.
I'm excited. A new session always brings new opportunities. On the Senate side, the committee leadership has stayed the same. There are some new members on the Senate Human Services Committee, so we'll have some learning to do there and as well, and that'll be the importance of you all reaching out to your local legislators and building relationships back home too. Before we move into when the session actually really gets started and what our priorities are, outgoing Governor Burgum, we have a weird system in North Dakota where he gives the budget address and budget proposal despite the fact that he's leaving in 10 days and there's a new governor. Any highlights from his budget address yesterday?
The significant things that we've been watching and really investing a lot of our time in over the last year is housing and property taxes. And that was two of his really main focus areas. And it's about looking at housing stability, affordability, access, and not just to folks that we really, want to make sure have housing as they age in place, but it's creating more availability, the options that are out there. So there's a significant amount of money that's been invested as part of the governor's housing task force that we were part of to really look at that. Building more, helping folks remodel homes, looking at, how do we create access to more affordable housing? That was a huge thing, really called for some significant changes to the property tax and looking at the relationship between the state legislature and what happens at local levels.
Yep.
And really talking about how can people understand their property tax bill better.
Yep.
And I think that's so key to all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see when Governor-elect Armstrong takes office, how much of that gets adjusted and continues. And I think we're all watching. I know we were at some meetings just this morning where we were asking that question, and even those who work in state government are saying, yeah, we're kind of waiting to see kind of what the next step is as well. With that, the legislature, they met the last 3 days, they got themselves organized, they're ready. They officially come back in January 7th, I believe they come back.
Later.
Yes, this is much later. We're used to coming back the 2nd or the 3rd. Obviously, there's going to be a lot on the menu for the legislature to tackle as a whole. We have 4 policy priority areas. So if you want to just kind of outline for everyone what our 4 areas are going into the legislative session.
Sure. The number one issue that we always hear from folks is making sure they can afford their medicine. So we're going to be really monitoring and tracking the insulin cap bill, expanding that beyond just the PERS program or state employees. We want to make sure that everybody in that private market has access to, affordable insulin, which is a really life-saving drug to so many people in our state as across the country. But we're also going to look at other ways that we can start to really, have a more critical conversation is what's the long-term solution to lowering the cost of drugs. Fraud, that's our number 2 issue that we hear a lot from folks, making sure that we protect residents of North Dakota from, the existing scams and frauds, but what are the new things? And we've heard a lot about cryptocurrency.
Well, yeah, I think just as to put a finer point on it, we just got a report from the FBI that Doreen shared with us from some of our fraud partners. $7 million in losses in North Dakota alone due to cryptocurrency fraud. And so knowing a lot of that is happening through cryptocurrency kiosks, that's something we'll be looking at this session as well. What else? We got 2 of the 4.
Yeah.
What else is
and the other 2 we talked about are housing and property tax. And those are going to be a little intertwined this legislative session. Obviously with the housing, we want to see those incremental shifts to make sure more affordable, accessible housing is there. But the property tax, you and I always talk about homestead property tax credit. And the governor talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
How can we make sure that you can age in place, you can afford your home, that just because your property taxes are going up, it's not going, and we want to make sure that the people that need that relief to stay in their homes has that, and really that homestead property tax credit is where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. So if folks want to help us out on those issues or other issues important to older adults, there's a couple of things. There's some coming up next week that they can be involved in. So let's start there. What's happening next week? You've got 2 trainings for folks who might want to help us out. So.
Yeah, so if you're interested in becoming an advocate, a volunteer with us and working with us hand in hand to do this legislative work, we have a training in person and online. Next week, you can go to aarp.org/ND events. So it's on Zoom on one day, and the next day it's in person. But we're really going to dig in and talk a little bit more about our priorities, what it looks like to be an activist, an advocate with AARP. How do you talk about our issues? And then really we're going to shift and hopefully we'll see many of you in January when we have Advocacy Day, which is kind of we want to train you in December to get you prepped and ready to meet your legislators and have critical conversations in January.
So, and whether you attend the training or not, we invite you to come join us on January 20th, Monday, January 20th. We're going to have AARP Day at the Capitol, our Advocacy Day. We have buses in Eastern North Dakota that are coming in, and then there is the potential for reimbursement if you're traveling in from elsewhere, and if you're in and around Bismarck. We do need you to register because we need to know how many meals we're going to provide that day, as well as make other materials preparations and things. So that's going to be on January 20th. You can register at aarp.org/ND events. So Marty told us we had 5 minutes, as is typical, we're at 9 minutes and 40 seconds. So Janelle, anything else we need to cover before we come back?
We promise you and Marnie that we will do better in the future. We will do better in the new year. We will keep it concise because we want to make sure that you watch us every week and that you learn more about what's happening in the session and how you can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you enjoyed our stuff a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, it feels like just yesterday, but 2 years ago, and you like this format, please let us know. Reach out, let us know, provide us some feedback, whatnot. You can always find out what's going on in our advocacy space at aarp.org/ND advocacy. And until January, bye-bye.